by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
And we're back with Wyoming Game and Fish on Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors. And we're at the part of the season where you can see the rifle season about to come. And Janet, I know that you and your family are ready to go out and do some hunting. And I know Benfit's already been out doing some hunting this year. And it's a rough time for everybody just because we all want to get to the same end result to have our freezers full.
Exactly. And, that is the key to the reason why my family hunts. And so last year we got skunked. And so I'm hoping that we have a more successful year this year. And so I'm looking to hear Justin tell us how great hunting season is going to be this fall, because that's the information that I really want to hear so that I can have a freezer full.
Justin, last week we talked about the check stations and how you guys get to chat with hunters and anglers that are out on the ground. And how's the report been so far? I mean, have people been pretty happy with the way the seasons have gone so far?
Here's where we're at. We've had antelope seasons in our region, like west of Casper. They've been open since September 15th. We had some other openers just on Monday, the 25th. So it kind of depends on where you're at. So far, antelope hunters have been fairly happy. If there's any complaint, it's been pretty darn warm. We've had warmer Septembers than this, but we've certainly had a lot cooler ones. So, it's been a little tough by 10 o'clock in the morning and when it's already in the 70s and antelope are bedding down. As we talked earlier in the year, Drew, like our antelope actually pulled through the winter better than we thought they were going to. So antelope numbers have been kind of a pleasant surprise for a lot of folks. We've had a lot of folks say, man, I'm seeing a lot more antelope than I thought I would. I think northwest of town, it's still a little light in area 73, but in the other areas, it's been pretty good.
And of course, the same thing that Justin always says, and I want to reiterate that here, is it depends on where you're hunting. We've had reports from across the state, other check stations that have said, harvest has been down maybe a fourth of people have been coming through of what they normally see that have been successful. So again, while the Casper area really pulled through well, some other places in the state, as have not.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure it's, folks are seeing already a lot less antelope in places like Southwest Wyoming and that sort of thing.
So as we progress through, we're just a week or two away from rifle season for elk coming in, and I know there are a lot of people chomping at the bit. And how are we looking in some of the hot spots for elk?
Well, really, really good. And of course, archery season's been underway all September. So in places, there have been plenty of bow hunters out. What a beautiful September to be bow hunting. Nice camping weather, that sort of thing. Elk numbers are always solid, and really in most all of the state. Elk opportunities are really good. In fact, we have a lot of rifle seasons here in the Casper area that open October 1st. Yeah, I would say nothing's really changed. If anything, in most of our herds, we got more bull elk than ever. Just trying to stay ahead of burgeoning elk populations and not overcrowd the public lands too much.
How do you see the deer season going? I know that was one of the species that there was reduced number in licenses because of situations where the numbers are kind of low in areas. But around our area, are we looking good? I know we've got the west side there that you guys are doing a lot of the checks on and making sure that those herds are in good shape.
It's hard to paint an overly rosy picture with deer numbers about anywhere in the state or the western U.S. for that matter, as far as mule deer goes. Our mule deer here in the Casper area definitely pulled through the winter okay. I mean, just fine. Deer numbers are down, so it depends on what you want to compare it to. If you want to compare it to the 80s and 90s, you're still going to be disappointed. But over the last several years, they seem to be holding steady. And I've actually seen, and here just in the last couple of weeks, out early mornings checking antelope hunters, I've actually been seeing quite a few deer and actually quite a few fawns. So there's a little bit of optimism there that I think we might be set to grow deer numbers just a little bit. It'll depend on how this coming winter goes. Certainly animals are in excellent shape after this summer. So they're entering the winter in as good a physical nutritional condition as you can be. So a little bit of good news on the horizon from that respect.
One thing that we've been hearing a lot about, because last year the winter it ended up being a heck of a winter. And they're talking where this winter is going to maybe even be earlier than in the past. And do you really foresee that maybe we're going to have some big issues this year?
I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a lot of great things that come out of having a good wet winter, and a lot of that stuff is forage for the animals. And so, there was a lot of great grass production, good sage brush leaders for food for all the animals to eat. And so those that were able to make it through last winter really are going into this winter in much better condition. So habitat is key at this point. And we just hope that, we have another winter that kind of maybe gives them a bit of a break for the critical part when they need a little bit of a break. And a lot of the problem that happens in the Casper area is when we get those snows and then it crusts over and they're not able to get down to that forage. So we just kind of hope that maybe we have not a lot of frost or not a lot of freezing of the snow and melting and freezing and melting. And so just kind of like Justin said, time will tell, but know that going in has been a really great summer. Great production for all of the food that those animals need.
Earlier this month, we did a quick survey on what wild game meat was the most popular. Would you want to take a guess at which wild game meat was the most popular?
Well, it's never my favorite, but I'm guessing elk was the most fantastic.
Elk was by quite a long shot. And then we just clumped the deer side together because there's the whitetail option and there's mule deer, and then antelope came in, but I feel like that probably is just because there's the option of lots of people getting antelope. But then I was kind of surprised that moose was so far down the line. Do you think moose was so far down the line because it's so rare to actually get a moose draw?
Well, have you ever had moose, Drew? I'll just say that.
I haven't.
No, there's a lot, there's a lot that goes into care of game meat. And I think a lot of times with moose, it does end up being a little bit tougher for various reasons. But I do think a lot of it is that not all of us have the opportunity to hunt moose. So when you are voting, you're pulling from a much smaller pool of people that would vote for moose just because not all of us have ever had that opportunity.
Well, and the other thing about that is I was lucky enough to have a moose tag 2 years ago, and it was excellent. It was my wife's favorite big game meat that we've had. But the vast majority of moose harvested in the state are mature bulls.
Yeah.
So they're going to be tougher anyway. Versus, with deer, elk, antelope, folks have harvested does or cows or young bulls or young bucks and that sort of thing. And so they can be really good too. But, like you said, though, it's also a meat care thing too. So, for example, antelope gets a bad rap all the time. And it is true that antelope can be a little bit gamier tasting, or stronger tasting than deer and elk and moose. But in my experience, most of the time that people say they don't like antelope, it's because it's 85 degrees out. They're trying to harvest 5 antelope in the same day. And the first one in the morning's been in the back of a truck for 8 hours.
They drug it across the sagebrush.
Yeah. And
sagebrush.
When folks skin those antelope, get them on ice, get them cooled down right away. Antelope is as good as any of the other stuff. And an antelope backstrap on a grill is arguably one of the better pieces of game meat in North America. So
antelope is absolutely pronghorn, my favorite animal to eat. And I'm lucky enough to have come from a hunting family who has spent years and years and decades out in the field. And many years ago, my family started, I don't know what you want to say. They have this great skinning rack that you can mount to the front of your truck. So they get these fantastic bumpers all welded up and have a skinning rack. And so when we harvest our antelope, we're able to hang it immediately, skin it immediately, and let it cool. And the difference that makes is absolutely 100% fantastic. And we've even had, folks to the house doing little samples and stuff of different meat. And I can trick a lot of my friends that will not eat eat game meat because they don't know the difference. So a lot of it is when you learn how to cook it correctly, when you learn how to take care of it correctly, any piece of game meat, I think can be pretty fantastic. And don't forget the health aspect of it. You know, it's all organic, you know where it's coming from. And
Right.
It's pretty fantastic.
Well, and then I've heard that, because I've never shot an antelope or any of that, but depends on how the antelope is when you kill that antelope. So if they're maybe running and their adrenaline is pumping, that has a little to do with that gamey taste as well. Is that?
I think that's a little bit of a wives' tale, honestly.
Agreed.
I mean, you know, depending on how quickly an animal dies after you shoot it, you know, I mean, adrenaline can surge at that point as well. And I think it's mostly about post-harvest meat care and getting it cooled right away. I think that's I think it's much more important, I guess, as far as preserving the quality and the taste of the meat.
I do think that antelope does get a bad rap because maybe one person had, one that was really, really gamey and then it just turned them off for the rest of the time. But every time I've eaten antelope, it's been good. I mean, it's really been tasty. So,
Like I said, it's always my favorite.
yeah.
And sometimes it's like Janet touched on too. It's also knowing how to cook it. A lot of folks, I think, you know, especially like a steak on a grill, one common mistake people make with big game meat, it's so lean. I mean, there's virtually no fat on it, and is that they slow cook it and they grill it. It's really important with those lean meats to flash cook stuff hot, fast, and it preserves the juices inside a whole lot better, and it makes a world of difference.
Medium rare is the way to go on a lot of that, isn't it?
You know, and there's a lot of really cool. We're certainly not out here to promote other people's books, but there's a lot of really cool cookbooks out there these days that specialize in, that have recipes that are tailored towards wild game and cooking wild game. And man, like Hank Shaw's and some of those are
Meat
some
eaters.
fantastic
Yeah.
recipes. So
Absolutely. Spend some time, do some research. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to holler because we all have great recipes where we can even have little children eating rabbits.
and don't forget about the birds. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, when you ask favorite game meat, if I had to tell you right now, my favorite game meat, it's hands down, it's ruffed grouse. I mean, a nice young ruffed grouse is the finest table fare in North America, as far as I'm concerned.
Now,
Some of our game birds are really good too.
would you prepare that like you would, prepare a chicken or something like that? Just a rotisserie maybe?
Oh, pretty much. I mean, with game birds, you know, you're not worried about cooking things hot and fast. I mean, you would cook them just like you would any kind of chicken or Cornish game hen or whatever, but any recipe you like for for fowl, I guess, works well for game birds.
And when in doubt, douse it in Frank's Red Hot. Life will be good.
And the more whiskey you drink while you're cooking it up, the better it tastes at the end.
To each their own, right?
That's right. Well, and one thing that I really want people to know is know exactly what you need to do after you harvest your animal. You know, like you're talking, if you take care of it, you're going to, have a better result and a better experience with that.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. You could ask 100 different hunters and you might get 98 different answers on how to do some of this stuff. You know, for example, I cut my own stuff up myself. As long as the temperatures allow and night times are cool enough, I mean, I hang my stuff for 2 full weeks, even to where even a little mold might even show up on the outside. But I think it makes a huge difference, but others may not agree.
They call that Wagyu in like the fancy terms, right? So I think we're okay there.
Wagyu, huh?
Yeah.
Trademark that.
We should.
As always, of course, if you have any questions, Game and Fish always good to answer it up. And you can always hit up wgft.wow.gov to find out how to contact them. Guys, good luck if you're heading out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Drew.
It's Wyoming Hookin' and Huntin' Outdoors.
It's Drew sitting along Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And boy, Brian, it's a busy time as elk season is fully underway now. We've got a lot of rifle seasons that are in, some are coming in, and some that'll be in within the next week.
Yeah, and we're seeing some great photos of some great animals that have been harvested and some good stories to go along with them.
Yeah, over the summer, we got to fish with our buddy Noah. And Noah's sister just outdid him.
Well, she shot a really nice bull a couple of days ago, for sure.
And those are the stories I'm getting a lot are people that are out for the first time doing their hunting or getting ready to go out on the first time and maybe not knowing exactly what to do. And here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, you guys have a wealth of knowledge and all the experience and supplies that you need.
Yeah, and we're talking to a lot of people that are from out of state, and they're working with some of these outfitters in the area, and it's kind of nice to just hear that, how pleased they are with the amount of merchandise and the quality of merchandise that we do carry, because we don't, we kind of take it for granted ourselves, especially me being here every day. But, to be able to walk somebody through and say, yep, here's the pack you need, here's the game bags you need, here's the scents you need, here's some gloves when you're cleaning, that kind of stuff. And then just working with people to make sure that they do get what they need.
So you were talking about going and helping pack out an elk, and you were like, oh, you got to have the right pack. We talked a lot about when you're getting ready for season to know what you have in your pack, but to know the difference between the packs is pretty important.
Yeah, just obviously, there's going to be some day packs, but then you might, especially if you're going to be, we had to hike in about from where we parked side-by-sides, another 2 miles. So we had to get that animal from the kill site back to the side-by-sides. And that requires, a lot of leg work, a lot of, deboning and, just cutting everything down so that they'll fit into the packs. And to have the right pack that puts the right weight on your hips and maybe a little off your shoulders, makes that trip a lot more, pleasant.
Yeah, and you're talking 2 miles in, and that's just to the animal. So if you have to go in and even help debone or quarter up, I mean, that's a heck of a process. Yeah,
2 miles in, 2 miles out, and a lot of guys will say, well, that's not that far. Well, it really isn't. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are in real deep, 5, 6, 7, 10 miles. And so just to be prepared and make sure that, you've got your knives with you, and everything that you possibly need. My buddy was up there with his 12-year-old daughter. So, she's, probably 70 pounds soaking wet. So having, some help where you can call some buddies to get that thing packed in and packed out, and just make it, it's a successful hunt for you.
And, even if you get that call and you're the person that's going to go help out, it's really good to know exactly where the people are and then know where you're going with maps. We talk about maps being really important, especially with property lines and crossing over. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, with Onyx Maps, you can share locations, and in this case, he was able to meet us at the main road and then get us back in to help him out. So, but it's a process. I mean, one person to quarter out an elk is a lot of work.
It sure is, and you can learn about that and everything else you need here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports for elk hunting. Maybe going on a deer hunt or an antelope hunt. Antelope. All three of them are a little bit different in the way that the type of hunt they are and really the supplies that you need for each.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of guys that are out here with some of the local outfitters, and they're out here for a 3 or 4 day trip, and they're the opportunity to shoot a antelope or pronghorn. They don't have those opportunities in their country, so some of them are spending a lot of time picking some great ones. Bob's wife out at Riverbend, Ashley, she shot an antelope that scored right around 86, wow. Which is just a toad. And so the amount of time you put in and the preparation on the hunt can definitely benefit you in the long run.
So, and you and I are going to go on an elk hunt here, and we both have cow-calf tags, and then once we quarter those up and start the processing, that could be a little different. Well, really, preference comes a lot in there, too. Do you want more steaks? Do you want it jerky? Do you want a burger? So there really are options when it comes to that, and doing it yourself is an option, especially when you come in here.
Yeah, so obviously the last, 10 years, I kind of learned pretty quickly that, to get into a processor, sometimes a little bit of challenge, depending on the time. But, it is kind of costly to have your animal processed. And obviously they do a great professional job. But, through YouTube videos and buddies and just some friends, purchasing a nice grinder and some of that equipment that can actually make the job easy at home. And so we've been doing that. And it turns into kind of a fun little event for a few buddies to, process an elk a week or whatever you do.
Now, I know that you have the access to a cooler, so you're able to keep it a little bit longer than someone else. But how long would you say to someone, you get your elk, you bring it in, it's in a cooler, you got it iced down? I mean, how long is it going to be good in that situation?
I'm probably not the best person to discuss that with. I don't really know. A lot of times, when I've harvested an elk, it's been kind of later in the season, and I kind of just build an A-frame in my garage, and I'll hang those quarters in there. They'll usually hang there for 10 days to 2 weeks, something like that, as long as it's nice and cool. Once we had these weathers like we did, last couple of weeks where it was in the 70s and 80s, you can't do that. So you pretty much need to get it down and get it processed pretty quickly, I think.
So then a Yeti or a Wild Gear big cooler would be perfect to store them in for temporary reasons, because they hold the ice for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd have to have a pretty good sized cooler, depending on if you're deboning them or just going to quarter them. But they do make some awfully big coolers. We've got some Grizzly coolers that are, 400 cubic inches in them. So they'll hold a lot. Keeping them cool, keeping them on ice, letting them breathe, pretty important.
And of course, get by here and check out Rocky Mountain Discount Sports for, if you're going to quarter yours up and process it, you need the seasonings and you need the cooking utensils. They've got that, all those smokers. You got a great line of smokers. You've even added some since last year.
Yeah, we've pretty much always carried the Traegers. Just they seem to be kind of the Cadillac of most grills, and they are just very reliable. I mean, we have a few small issues, but they're easily fixable. This last year, we brought in the Pit Boss, and the Pit Bosses have been a fantastic addition to our lineup. Good quality, got some neat features that Traeger doesn't have, and they're working great and definitely worth the look.
Come on out here and check it all out. Rocky Mountain Discount Sports on CY Avenue right here in Casper.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew and Brian Woodward back at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And Brian, just this week, you got a chance to go out and spend time on the water, and fishing's not done. We've talked about that quite a bit.
It was a very chilly morning. I think it was 37 when we got on the water, and we got on fairly early, right, pretty much at daybreak. But it did warm up, and it was a beautiful day, actually.
When you got on the water, it was 37 degrees. Did you get bites right away, or was it kind of a slow move?
Oh no, yeah, we got bites. I mean, first, second, third cast. I mean, it was right off the bat. Yeah, we were down at Glendo and fishing down towards the marina, and we better quality than the last time I was there, I will say that. Not as many fish, but we probably boated 20, 25 fish in good 4 or 5 hours, and it was busy most of the time, so it was good. How
are the water levels down there? Because we talked I think a week or two ago that they plugged it back up.
For me, I'm not down there enough now this time of year to really kind of notice a whole lot of difference, but I'm sure the numbers are on the Bureau of Rec side showing that they're going up. So, and we should start seeing water that's coming out of Alcova start hitting that, and that'll bump it up a little bit as well. So.
I had a couple of people ask me, because they heard us talking about on the show last week, about why they release water out of Alcova. And I thought, well, I mean, the obvious thing is to just bring the levels down for when ice comes on, right?
Well, I think they just kind of like the agreement with Bureau of Rec is that they'll bring it up in the summer as it's primarily for recreation. Mm-hmm. Alcova is not really designed 100% for irrigation like some of these other reservoirs are. So they have like a minimum recreation level that they'll bring that up, and obviously people have docks and stuff in there, so those docks have to be useful. But then they bring that water down in the fall. I don't know exactly the entire purpose of that. Maybe it's so that they can provide a little bit more water downstream, or maybe it's just so that the people that have docks and stuff can have some time to do repairs on the docks and whatnot. I don't know, but yeah, it's just they've been doing that ever since I've been in Wyoming, so that's just the program.
So fall time means lower water in Alcova and higher water in Glendo, and then we start doing the whole process over again. But still, we have the other reservoirs like Boysen that is fishable still, and Pathfinder. You were there last week and got pretty good fish.
Pathfinder's still in the upper 60s, I believe, and I think Boysen reservoirs, plumb in the 90s. So yeah, there's plenty of water and there's plenty of good fishing to be done.
We've always talked about being prepared because, like you say, it was 37 when you started and probably 65 or 70 by the time you're done. So you're stripping off clothes at that point.
Right.
So being prepared and that is always a good situation. And we went out goose hunting last weekend.
Right.
And that's another situation where we got out there, it was a little bit chilly, but then by 8:30 it was hot and the sun was on our face.
Yeah, and we packed up and got out of there.
Yeah, we did. My eyeballs were burning.
Yeah. No. There's just so much to do this time of year. I mean, between bird hunting and upland and waterfowl and this big game stuff and fishing. I mean, it's kind of hard to pick what you want to do.
Yeah, no kidding. And we were really talking a little bit when we were out on the goose blind this week about how the birds are moving, but they're local birds. And when we started to breast them out, you could really tell that there wasn't much fat on those birds right now. They're not really. They're
not traveling birds. They're golf course birds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And if you've been out on a golf course, you probably had to step over the crap a time or two. But
yeah, there is a ton of birds on the golf courses.
How does the northern weather that they've already had snow in some of the parts of Wyoming in the north and even Montana? I think they've had quite a bit of snow. Will that be good for us when it comes to the birds?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that traditional migration. Once it gets cold enough, then they're going to start moving. In fact, when we were down at Glendo this week, noticed a bunch of cormorants that were all heading south. So there's just certain things, just like doves and everything else. The doves, we've had doves in Wyoming longer than I can remember. And talking to guys that are up north, they still have doves up there. So, those doves are going to still migrate down through Wyoming. Whether they stay here very long or not depends on how the weather is once they get here. But, we don't see a big push out of like Montana until the Yellowstone River freezes up. And we're a long ways away from that.
Right. We haven't even had our first freeze, which we're about 3 weeks behind schedule on when it comes to the freeze here in Wyoming.
Good.
or is that, oh man, it's going to hit us once and then it's not going to stop. That's one of those things. But no matter what you're doing this fall, make sure you get out, enjoy it, and stop by Rocky Mountain Discount Sports to get yourself all geared up.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome back to Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. I know there are lots of hunters that are out and about, out in the field, and then throughout the rest of fall and early part of 2024. A lot of elk hunters and deer hunters and antelope hunters and moose hunters and bear hunters all will be out and going for that big game to fill the freezer. And, if you shoot an animal and you have problems finding that animal, that could be the biggest fear that a hunter has. You don't want to maim an animal. You don't want to hurt an animal. You don't want to not be able to find an animal. So you got to find it. So what do? You can call Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. And we have Scott Gillespie with us. And Scott, we always like talking to you and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot for having me, Drew.
Now, you guys have been in business for a few years now, and it's really nice to look at the webpage, which is RockyMountainBigGameRecovery.org, and see that the number of those trackers is really growing. You're up to 17 different trackers now.
Actually, we have about 25 trackers that are members of the organization. 17 of them, I believe, wanted to have their contact information on our map, which is on our website. I have we have three trackers that came from east of the Mississippi River that are actually going to be out here helping us try to recover some of these big game animals here in the month of September.
Wow. So they're coming from all over the United States to be part of this group. And, you know, the hunting situation here in the Rocky Mountain region is the best in the country. There's no doubt about it, because there's so many opportunities for people to hunt big game. And since you guys have been doing this, what species of animal has been the biggest that you guys have had to go in and track?
It's across the board, you know. Very, very rarely do I get an antelope call. You know, I think I maybe this will be my 6th year of doing this, and I maybe have only done 2. And the reason is usually antelope go down pretty easy once they've been hit. Plus, they're in wide open country, so even if they run a mile and fall over, you really don't need to call in a tracker to find them. September, it's primarily elk. I get my fair share of mule deer calls too. Once September's over and we get into October and we start to get into the deer rut, the phone starts ringing again, you know, at the end of October and through November. And I've actually done tracks as late as January on elk, late season elk. So it kind of depends on the time of the year which animal that we get the most calls for.
When you go out, and I know that you have done a splendid job with your dogs and making sure that your dogs are trained up, and you guys have a really good recovery rate, don't you?
Yeah, you know, if you know, when we get phone calls from hunters that need help, you know, I got a list of questions that I start asking guys, and it can take me 15, 20 minutes to interview a hunter, you know, and determine if I think that it's a lethal hit. I have the time to possibly go out there and do the recovery. You know, the percentage rate across the nation of guys doing this is about 40%. I would say that on average, I might be running as high as 50 and 60% on recovery. But if I did take every track, it would probably be more like 40%. You know, there's a lot of different factors that play in. Private property lines stop us quite a bit. Could be weather, could be nightfall. There's just several factors that can play into not being able to get a recovery.
You had mentioned that you ask questions, and you guys have a great section on your website that has those facts that you need to know that will at least help you in your recovery mission.
Guys get into the moment. You kind of want to turn your mind into maybe a recorder as to what is actually happening. You know, I'd like to know what equipment you were using, how far the shot was, how the animal was standing when you took the shot. Was he quartering to? Was he quartering away? Was it perfectly broadside? Was he looking directly at you? And then the big question is how long did you wait once you took the shot to start tracking? Because that's a major factor. You know, I try to tell guys, you know, if you take a broadside shot and with a bow and you double lung him, very rarely you're going to give me a call. A lot of times you're going to see the animal go down. You know, as the arrow moves back, you know, a liver shot or maybe you're way far back and you hit the animal right in front of the hams, you know, in a gut shot. Those gut shots can be very recoverable if you give the animal time to expire. And I tell guys, on liver shots, I want them to wait at least 8 hours before you go in there and start tracking yourself. Maybe a shot a little bit farther back, let's wait 12 to 24 hours before we go in there. And we'll usually find that animal within 200 to 400 yards of where you took the shot.
And we're talking with Scott Gillespie, Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery, and we were talking at the beginning of our conversation here that there are up to 25 trackers that are out to help out. And in Wyoming, we have a really good number of trackers that are in state. So where you're in northern Colorado, if one of the trackers that you contact is right here in Wyoming, boy, that really cuts down on that response time, doesn't it?
When somebody calls me for a track, let's say I'm here in Wellington, Colorado, just south of Cheyenne. Let's say somebody calls me from Laramie Peak. You know, that's a 3-4 hour drive for me to get up there. I might interview the hunter and determine whether it's a track that we possibly want to take. If I can't make it, all of us keep in contact. I will just send out a group text to all the trackers. Hey, I have a guy on Laramie Peak. I think his elk is probably dead. If anybody's interested in taking the track, here's his phone number. So if you call me and you're not just talking to me, you're talking to about 25 different trackers right now.
So when the initial contact is made, if they go to RockyMountainBigGameRecovery.org and make sure you have the numbers in your phone, make sure you have a checklist. You can download those, the questions you're going to ask them, so that you can kind of go over that and answer the questions before they call in their mind, so that they're prepared for you.
You know, they're not going to get every question that I'm going to ask them, and I'm going to try to determine whether I think it's a fatal hit if we have time to come out there and possibly do the recovery. I mean, this isn't our full-time job. All of us trackers have regular jobs, so that's a major factor. You got to catch us at the right time to come out and do it. So, another big thing I want to kind of mention on the show here is, if you're listening to this, if this is something that you're really interested in possibly doing, that's another thing we do with our Facebook page is trying to train, help other people train their dog and becoming a tracking team and joining the group.
Very cool stuff. Scott Gillespie again, Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. Go to their website, which is RockyMountainBigGameRecovery.org. Get all the information that you need. And Scott, I do appreciate you being back on the show, and continued success, and I hope you have a very eventful year.
Hey, I appreciate it, Drew.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.